You are a special listener. You have been chosen to revisit a movie that stands alone as uncontaminated from the rest of the plague-ridden movies of Michael Bay. Your prize for winning the lottery is to return to 2005's The Island to discover once and for all that it's not that bad. Welcome one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies. Now, I'm just going to put this out there right on Front Street. I may be a little biased personally in this one because as much as we kind of like to rip on Michael Bay on this show occasionally, and let's be honest, what podcaster hasn't ripped on Michael Bay? I'm going to put this out there right now, right away, and say we are about to talk about my absolute favorite Michael Bay film of all time, because we are talking 2005's The Island.
I have a question.
Yes?
More than Transformers?
More than Transformers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's big.
I know. But joining me on this journey to the island is my lovely wife, Carrie. Carrie,
hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good, but I might be suffering shock at this moment in time.
Like you have to... let me explain why Carrie is probably very, very, very shocked. I am a fully admitting...
certified geek?
Yes, but growing up, I was a Transformers kid. To the point of when the 1986 Transformers animated movie came out, I went to go see it a couple times in the theaters. But then when it hit the video store, I rented it ad nauseum. I rented it so many times it would have been cheaper to buy the VHS, to the point that I had that movie word for word memorized.
Ooh,
yeah.
That's my Batman.
That is your Batman.
For you to say that you like any movie more than a Transformers product,
right?
Or franchise is like saying I like Barbie more than Gem. Well, as your listeners know, that's a big statement there.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll have to ask you that again once the Margot Robbie Barbie movie comes out. But
Ooh.
Right?
Intriguing.
It is intriguing. But before we get into this Michael Bay film that has all of a sudden, piqued the interest of my wife, it is time to take 2005's The Island and trailerize it. Imagine a future with mag trains and flying motorcycles, where the rich can achieve immortality by paying a company to create clones that can be used as spare parts. Travel to the distant future of 2019. Hold up. It's 2019? This takes place in 2019. Where the hell are our mag trains? Why can't I fly around on a hovercycle? And why does Yucca Mountain look like a DLC level of Fallout? I know the pandemic was rough, but did I miss something? This film only came out in 2005. Can you count a little higher, huh? Where was I? Oh, yes. Watch as clones Lincoln 6 Echo and Jordan 2 Delta run for their lives after she wins the lottery. Much like anyone would run if they actually won the lottery and didn't want their friends and family to find out and start looking for handouts. Together, they'll trash Nevada, trash Los Angeles, and trash anything that stands in the way of their freedom. That's what happens when you don't let Obi-Wan have his bacon. Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson star in The Island, rated 14A for Attack of the Clones.
I am so glad you said Attack of the Clones.
Right?
Were they sponsored by Nike?
There is... we have to kind of talk about this. Well, let's talk about this now. Because there is a ton of product placement in this film. It is the most Michael Bay version of... and this kind of led into what Transformers was, right? Transformers was one product placement after another, to the point of the Transformers themselves were basically product placements for like Chevrolet. This was almost like the gateway drug to prepare you for that, because there was a lot of product placement in there. But since you brought it up, did it bug you as to how much product placement was in there?
I have to be honest, aside from the Nike shoes, I'm not quite sure. Maybe I've missed a whole lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so like there's the scene where they're like virtual fighting each other while they're, before they escape from the facility. Clearly sponsored by Xbox. There's I think it's like Michelob was the beer that Steve Buscemi's character was drinking, where it's like, let's have a product shot before he freaking drinks it. Like the fact that there's a scene. Okay, again, first of all, this is a 2005 film, and we're recording this podcast in 2023. So if you haven't watched it yet, it's available on Prime Video. So go ahead and watch it. But if you have watched it, get ready. We're going to spoil the crap out of it anyways. There's a scene in this movie where Scarlett Johansson sees a commercial of the person that she's cloned off of. Mm-hmm. That's a real commercial with Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
What was it for? CoverGirl or something?
No, it was Eternity Moment by Calvin Klein. Uh-huh. Like, it's an actual, you can find this commercial. Like, they basically just took the commercial. Yeah, let's use that. Why shoot something new with Scarlett Johansson? It already exists.
That's hilarious.
There's so much. It's not as blatant as Transformers, but there is a lot of product placement in this. But let's get into who is in this movie. This movie stars Ewan McGregor, Scarlett Johansson, Djimon Hounsou, Steve Buscemi, Sean Bean, Michael Clark Duncan, Ethan Phillips. Directed by Michael Bay, because we've already said it a million times. The original script, we kind of joked about this in the trailer eyes. The original script had this movie set 100 years in the future. They kept on bringing that number down, apparently, according to IMDb, for budgetary reasons, because they didn't want to spend so much of a CGI budget to create a super futuristic society. So let's bring it back a bit. Yeah, 14 years. That ought to be fine. The world should be gone by 2019.
Can I just point out that they picked 2019?
What does Michael Bay know?
COVID-19. I swear it was like on his radar.
Right?
Maybe he's to blame.
What did Michael Bay know, and when did he know it? That's what we're asking.
COVID-19 is a Michael Bay product.
Yeah. We've turned It's Not That Bad into a conspiracy theory show. Yeah. There we go. Soon to be aired on Fox News.
Follow us for more bullshit news.
But here's an interesting movie theory, though, okay? People out there have hypothesized that this film lives in the same universe as another Michael Bay film, Armageddon, for one simple connection. And that connection is through actress Shawnee Smith. Now, most people will recognize Shawnee Smith from her roles in the Saw movies, but in Armageddon, she played a waitress who met up with Steve Buscemi at a bar. And in this film, she plays the bartender who, of course, is living with Steve Buscemi at the time. So there is your connection right there. This film was given a dishonorable mention at the Stinkers Bad Movie Awards for worst film that year. The winner of that year was Alone in the Dark. So this didn't even make the top 5. And there were no Razzie nominations. There were no other Stinkers Movie Award nominations. So it's not like this film was panned. However, it was passed at the box office. This film had a budget, according to IMDb, of $126 million. The domestic gross, $35 million only for a Michael Bay film domestically. Worldwide, it made $162 million. When it debuted on the July 22nd, 2005 weekend, it debuted at number 4 with only $12.4 million. Number 1 that week was the second week of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Wedding Crashers was number 2. Fantastic Four was number 3. The Island was the highest grossing debut film. Following that was number 5, the debut of the Bad News Bears remake. At number 7, there was the debut of Hustle and Flow. And at number 8, The Devil's Rejects was also debuting. So there were a lot of movies making their debuts that weekend. But, I mean, when you read up on this, there was a lot of talk about how people were blaming the marketing. Like, people were saying nothing really bad about the film, but it's just like they didn't know what it was about. They didn't know it existed. Like, I get that a Michael Bay film these days is the biggest thing to hit the screen because it's going to have the most explosions. But I mean, let me ask you, if I say, let's watch a Michael Bay film, what's the first film that comes to mind?
Transformers.
And then after that?
Bumblebee.
Well, he didn't direct that, though.
Then I have no clue.
I mean, the Bad Boys movies, okay, yeah, sure. Armageddon, sure, why not? The Rock, people who want to subject pain upon themselves might pick Pearl Harbor, but this film kind of flies under the radar, and it's kind of a shame because it is, in my opinion, one of his best movies. But that being said, for the longest time, this movie held the record for Michael Bay's worst performing film domestically at the box office with that 35 million gross as a director. There were other movies where he, as a producer, like basically he's putting money into it kind of thing. So he's not really the one pulling the strings, but as a director, this was his lowest grossing domestic box office film until 2022. When Ambulance hit the screens. But I mean, you can even put an asterisk on Ambulance because it came out in 2022. Just as movies and theaters are starting to open up to a sense of normalcy. So I think you have to consider The Island still to be one of maybe his worst performing movie at the box office domestically. And I don't know if that played into anything over at the critics. Over on Metacritic, this film has a Metascore of 50, right down the middle. But on Rotten Tomatoes, it has an audience score of 63%, so fairly respectable. A Rotten Tomatoes score of 39%. Considering that this film, I mean, at least personally, I find to be one of his best films, is that 39% really harsh to you?
I think so. I mean, I'd be curious what they were saying. Personally, I could say that the movie was a bit almost like it starts out and you're like, okay, right? So this is the world that they live in. And
a very utopian society, yeah.
And right. And then as you're watching it, you're like, okay, there's something very odd about this. So what's happening? And then there's that middle part that's, like a Michael Bay film, you know, like
big things go boom.
Insert, big explosions here. And then boom, they're in the real world, and like Ewan McGregor meets Ewan McGregor, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just it almost kind of felt to me like two separate movies that were kind of mixed together with a big explosion.
And that's kind of, I think, the general consensus. Even Roger Ebert had put it out saying, there are two very good films here. Whether they're good together remains to be seen. But to the same token as well, as far as the story goes, there's a lot of talk about how it's kind of riffs on all these other stories to the point that there's some controversy applied to this film. There was, according to Wikipedia, a lawsuit from the makers of the 1979 film Parts the Clonus Horror. And they basically brought a list of 100 points of similarity between the Clonus Horror and The Island. It was never really taken to court because there was a 7-figure settlement reached between the makers of The Island and the makers of the Clonus Horror. So Whether it is a copy or not remains to be seen. But that being said, if you want to watch the Clonus horror, you can actually find the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version of that over on Tubi. But I mean, a lot of people have also compared this to a 1996 novel called Spares, written by Michael Marshall Smith. And the interesting thing is that novel was optioned by DreamWorks in the late 90s, according to Wikipedia. The author has said that he looked at it and didn't really see any direct correlation, but I mean, there's a lot of comparisons to it. And people have mentioned that there's comparisons to Logan's Run, to THX 1138. I mean, I remember personally watching this film and then reading Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and like this feels kind of like the utopian part of the book. So it's not like it's not like it's an original story, but there's really nothing original in Hollywood. Everything is kind of a riff on everything else. You know the story, right? Like there's only like, what was it, 33 stories in Hollywood, and everything is just a riff on those 33 or something like that. But it's not, that doesn't necessarily make this a bad film. It just doesn't make it necessarily original. But let's get to what makes this film, at least in my opinion, a decent film. Let's start with Ewan McGregor, who plays Lincoln Six Echo. How was Obi-Wan for you?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Fantastic, especially when he meets his real life human version.
His sponsor, yes.
His sponsor. Well, it's him, is it not?
Yeah, they're called sponsors.
But it's the human version.
Yes.
The Scottish-speaking human version.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Which is fascinating because, of course, Ewan McGregor is Scottish.
Absolutely loved every moment. He could read me the phone book.
Really? Over David Tennant, huh?
Well, no. I mean, either. Whoever's not busy this weekend, you know.
Just give a call. Pick up the Scottish phone book and just start reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just go full Scouse and you're good. The other thing, too, is that Tom Lincoln, the sponsor, the real life person, is a speed enthusiast, a motorcycle enthusiast, as is Ewan McGregor as well. So really, Ewan McGregor got to play himself as Tom Lincoln, but as Lincoln Six Echo. It's interesting because apparently they were telling all the people who were playing clones that really they're of the mentality level of children. You really see that in Lincoln Six Echo. You see this almost youthful, childlike naivete and wonder at the world around him, especially when they get outside the facility. There was just something so earnest about how Ewan McGregor played Lincoln Six Echo in this. Like, I don't know. Did you find, because there were times where I'm like, oh, they're making him like a dumb kid, but
you know what though? With that said, I love how they didn't downplay or didn't like they didn't make him as childlike as some of the examples.
Yeah.
The one gentleman who was trying to eat the test tubes or whatever. Like.
But if you take a look at the naming convention of all the different clones, that was a Foxtrot model, right? So that was a newer batch of clones, you know, recently found in the contaminated zones and brought to this place so they could enter the lottery to go to the island. So the names of them, Lincoln Six Echo, the Lincoln part comes from his sponsor, Tom Lincoln. Six is actually the geographic region of the states that the sponsor lives in. So Six was in California. That's why Scarlett Johansson was Jordan 2 Delta. The 2 was New York, Jordan being Sarah Jordan, the sponsor. The Delta and the Echo are basically the batch number of where they're doing these clones. So that's why with the Echo level, that there was this, growth of memories that came from the sponsor, which is why Lincoln Six Echo was having all of these visions that actually were from Tom Lincoln's memory. So there is actually quite a bit of thought to the naming of the clones.
It's interesting you say that because I was under the impression that they were given like randomly the same 12 memories.
Yeah.
And depending on which one they were given,
Yeah.
like that's what they were assigned. That's all they knew. But you're saying that he could see?
He was having basically the memories of Tom Lincoln, because with Jordan 2 Delta, Scarlett Johansson's character, she was an earlier model. She was an earlier batch. So, for lack of a better term, the recipe in the soup, was only developed thus far. Lincoln 6 Echo is a later model, which is why when they say Jordan is like 4 and he's like 3 years old kind of thing. So there was something in what they did when they were making the Echo series of clones that allowed the ability for the memories to also grow from the DNA from the sponsor, which is why the Echo line, that's why when they were ready to incinerate all of the clones, they were all Echoes. So it was that line. It was basically a bad batch in their opinion. It was a recall.
Can I just put out right now, because before I forget to mention this one point, my one sticky point with the entire movie, I think personally, watching this movie, I would have liked to have seen the sponsor's life story. Like, I would have liked to have seen what actually happened to Scarlett Johansson's character or human, that she was in the hospital, because the only reason we knew that is that she had tried to contact the house and the child was like, Mom? Like,
but they addressed that though.
But I wanted to see like more of that kind of, like, even if it's just editing back and forth from one reality of actual life back to the utopian society that is like something, right? Because they're randomly winning the lotto and then getting hacked up.
I'm going to disagree with you on that one. Actually, you're wrong. At least in my opinion. Yeah, make that your ringtone.
Wow.
But I mean,
this went south fast.
When they bring Ewan McGregor into the CEO's office to have that little meeting to talk about the dreams that he's having, kind of thing, he sees Sarah Jordan's and Jordan 2 Delta's file up on the desk before the CEO puts it away, and then they're talking about with Sarah Jordan, the sponsor, that she's only got about 48 hours to live. That's when he sends Jumon Hansu out to go find them. Like, the sponsor only has X amount of time to live. She needs those body parts. She needs those organs from Jordan 2 Delta in order to be able to survive. I don't think we needed to see much more of it. I mean, we knew that Michael Clark Duncan's sponsor was a football player, right? We saw that in the billboard. We saw the sassy secretary talking about it, kind of thing. I don't think the story was really about any of the sponsors aside from Tom Lincoln.
I just think in the beginning, I mean, even like an opening credits scene, just to base it in New York, and Scarlett Johansson's sponsor starts to feel ill or whatever it is that's causing her to go into the hospital, just to at least introduce the characters that there is a world outside this utopian society, and to at least like something that you can trigger a memory to, like at the end when, oh yeah, so now her clone is winning the lottery, but Ewan McGregor's clone like was aware or starting to learn and piece together what's happening here, and that she's going to die, so he has to save her out of that. Like,
I kind of disagree with that too.
Something like, give me something more than just finding out as you go. So close to the end of the movie.
But I think it's not really at the end of the movie, but I think it's one of those things where they sprinkled enough throughout the realization, and before Lincoln pops up into the floor where they're doing the surgery on Starkweather, and that's a harsh scene. right? Like when he tries to run after he's been cut open, and he's like, I want to go to the island. I don't want to die. We're not watching this movie with the kids, but I don't think you needed that spoon fed to you. I liked that it was, a bit of a reveal. I liked that, there were seeds of the knowledge planted throughout to get to that point, but it wasn't just like, it allowed something to reveal.
I think, though, I'm still going to respectfully disagree, because you want something to feel for these characters or the sponsors. You want to actually see them as human, to want to try and save them, to at least want to justify what's going on here.
Let me play devil's advocate on that one there, because it's an interesting concept, though, right? Because yes, I do agree that there's the part where Jordan True Delta makes the phone call to her sponsor, right? And she realizes that her sponsor is in the hospital, and the kid's like, "Mommy, is that you?" kind of thing. That part you could see where there's going to be, a decision to be made. Do I live or do I die so that this person can live? But to the same token as well, Tom Lincoln is not a likable character at all.
Which is exactly why you needed to tease with the Scarlett Johansson's character or sponsor.
But to that token as well, we're talking about people that are rich enough to be able to create clones. So basically, they have a spare parts factory, so they can achieve immortality by cheating out death. So that
something, though, give me something, like show her at the park with her kid, or walking the little one to school, or like something. Like, make us feel for her. Like, again, yeah, because Tom Lincoln's character was so unlikable.
Yeah.
That honestly, I found myself thinking, okay, so why exactly do I care? I want to care. And I think that's what's missing, is just humanize one. It doesn't even have to necessarily be Scarlett Johansson's character. I think that would make the most sense.
Yeah.
But you at least have to show that there is a human being that is like depending on this clone to live.
I think they did that, though, a little bit,
not enough for me, though.
Maybe not enough for you, but there was the one scene, and this was when the realization really hit, right? Lima 1 Alpha, who won the lottery, who was pregnant, and they brought her upstairs to deliver the baby, and then all of a sudden you realize that this clone is basically a surrogate mother, because the mother who basically paid the price to have the clone probably could not have children for one reason or another. So that one makes sense.
They could have explored that even. They didn't. You're just kind of like led to figure it out or feel for the character. That was a hard scene to watch, because...
Well, especially from the nurse sitting there as she's putting the straps on the ankles, and it's just like you did your job, you did really well, you gave birth, and it feels so bad knowing that I'm going to have to end you, because...
But she had that false empathy look that it was just like almost condescending. I'm like, ugh.
It's hard to say. Like, I don't know if it's, a forced coldness in order to be able to allow her to have the clone killed. But I
honestly think that, like, those performing the operations literally did not look at them as human. They literally looked at them like, this is just a necessary means to an end. Like, they're really nothing more than...
This clone was an easy bake oven, in essence. Like,
I hate to put a line to it, but like maybe like a butcher and a slab of meat. Like,
well, there's that line in the movie, and I think it was done by Tom Lincoln. It's like, just because someone wants a hamburger doesn't mean they want to meet the cow.
Right.
Yeah, which brilliant freaking line. Love that. But I mean, it that moment though, where they kill Lima 1 Alpha after giving birth, it shows that on the part of the Merrick industry or whatever, the Merrick Institute, this is business. There's no attachment to these clones. This is business. And to the people who are giving their money to Merrick in order to be able to do this, no matter how much they may, claim that ignorance is bliss kind of thing. Oh, we just thought that there was no. You had to have an idea.
Well, that's exactly why I want to see a backstory, at least one. Give me one where I can actually feel bad or feel for the human angle that for whatever reason they want to live. They need to have this clone so that they can extend their life because for whatever reason, again, if it's Scarlett Johansson's character, she wants to see her child grow up, right? And maybe she knows that she's sick with a terminal illness and it's, going to end very quickly. Or if it's the surrogate mother scenario, like let's see her struggle in trying to have a child of her own, and give me something so that I can feel for the human behind the clone because they missed the mark on that. I'm sorry, but I still feel that way.
It's interesting because you have in Tom Lincoln a very unlikable sponsor.
Right.
So when he's killed, again, sorry, spoilers. So when he's killed, you're like, oh great, the clone's going to get his freedom. If we got to meet Sarah Jordan, the sponsor of Jordan 2 Delta, and we saw that she was, yes, a model or an actress or whatever the case may be, but a good mom and a good person who just happens to have an unfortunate, say, hereditary condition that's, going to cause her to die prematurely and leave this child motherless. At what point do you sit there and stop feeling for Jordan 2 Delta who just wants to live? And then feel for Sarah Jordan. It puts a moral conundrum into a story where, big things go boom.
Well, I have issue too with Tom Jordan. No,
Tom Lincoln.
Tom Lincoln. I have issue with Tom Lincoln, the real human, being the one that was shot because with the clones would have had that marking.
Yeah.
On their wrist. The shooter should have known that. So that should have been the first thing he looked for. But he didn't.
From that distance, though, he wouldn't necessarily be able to see the branding, but he did see the bracelet that Lincoln Six Echo put on Tom Lincoln.
True.
I understand where a story could come where you can create that moral conundrum of the person who is going to die and leave their child motherless needs these parts from this clone that they have purchased. The clone is sentient and wants to live. Where's the moral conundrum? I think it's a fascinating story idea. I just don't know if Michael Bay's the director to do that story.
Well, that's unfortunate because that would have been a completely different movie. And I think would have benefited in the end. Why put the unlikable character as the main storyline when you could have focused on you could have gone a completely different angle and really had the viewer kind of go, I don't know which side I'm on anymore. Obviously human life is paramount, but so should the lives and the wants and the needs of these clones. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then it's like, did I actually think that it was okay at the end? But give me the more human story to tell.
Yeah. And I think, again, like I said, there's a fascinating moral conundrum story in that. I don't think it's the kind of film that would have a $125 million budget.
I think part of that was the lawsuit. No.
No. I think that's just the filming budget. But that this is, like, again, one of those after the fact things. But getting back to the breakdown here, Scarlett Johansson, because we've already talked about her character quite a bit, but how was Scarlett Johansson as Jordan 2 Delta for you?
I love everything she does. She's
Really?
so great. She can rock any hair color and any hairstyle. But that aside, you know what? I really liked her, and I wanted to see, again, more of her.
Yeah. We talked about this before we started recording. The only time her hairstyle did not work was the Black Dahlia. I'm just going to put that out there. But I mean, again, getting back to the nature of these clones, they're children. And I think, again, there's this wonderful, youthful naivete in Jordan 2 Delta, right? Everything is new to her. When they get to the bar, right? Everything is new, from the alcohol to the smells to everything. The idea of clothing is new to her, like clothing that's not the Adidas tracksuit that they're all wearing, right? Like, and that conveys so much in her expression as she's experiencing everything. I mean, you can sit there and, poke holes through the big explosion scene in Los Angeles when they're being chased. Like, yep, they survived all of this, but...
And on foot. They outran whatever that hover motorcycle was.
Yeah.
In the chase. They
ran so much.
The police Hummer.
They covered more foot distance than an entire season of Doctor Who. Just going to put it out there. Also, tell me Ewan McGregor wouldn't be a great Doctor Who.
Ooh.
Right?
Yes.
Scarlett Johansson as a companion.
Love it.
Done. Do it.
Make it so.
Yes. But yeah, I think this is, I don't know if it's one of her best roles, because she's had some phenomenal roles. She's a great actress. I also find it funny that this is the third Scarlett Johansson film we've had to discuss on this show. Because, of course, we talked about Rough Night, and we also talked about The Spirit.
I think Miss Johansson needs to speak to her agent.
Well, no, she just needs to Black Widow her agent and get more, not even better films. Because it's not like these films are bad. They're good films. They're just critically panned. That's it.
Okay, critics, leave her alone.
Right? Like, we have seen Scarlett Johansson tackle hot wings on that one YouTube show.
Yes, that was so great.
You do not want to mess with Scarlett Johansson. She will hot wing you under the table. Just putting it out there. Moving on. Albert Laurent is played by Jimon Hansu. This is the leader of the special ops team that is sent to chase after them. Your thoughts on Jimon Hansu?
Yeah, you know what? He was good. No, I mean, here nor there. I mean, it could have been any actor, really.
Yeah. The thing I liked about him, right? And, you mentioned Transformers earlier, right? Transformers has a very, rah military kind of feel to some of the characters. Obviously not Shia LaBeouf. He's just too busy Shia LaBeoufing all over the place. But anyone who's involved in the military and Transformers is very raw kind of thing. Jimon Hansu isn't military. He's special ops, right? He's covert. He's cool. He's suave. Not suave per se.
I didn't really find him that suave.
No, I was going to say not suave, but he's efficient, right? He's not loud. He's not barking orders like a caricature of a G.I. Joe action figure, right? He's meant to work in the shadows.
I could have seen like a Sam Jackson in that role.
I think Jimon Hansu played it better. Sam Jackson might have been too much, in my opinion.
I thought it needed it, though.
Nah.
Like, again, he was kind of unassuming to me, so I was like, yeah, he's okay.
No. He. There were times when he had that look of like, he will straight up kill you, and you won't even see it. Samuel L. Jackson will monologue and say motherfucker about 17 times before he puts a bullet in you. Mm-hmm. Oh,
that makes it more entertaining.
You want 17 before a bullet goes into somebody. I understand now. but it's I will say his character is way more subtle than you would give anything in a Michael Bay film credit for. Like you expect a Michael Bay film to be loud. And he can come in and be like a silent killer. It's great. I think it was cool. Ethan Phillips, most people will remember him as Neelix from Star Trek Voyager. He plays Jones 3 Echo. Your thoughts?
Fantastic. So great. Like, just thinking of his portrayal of his clone, it just brings a smile to my face.
It's funny because you were talking earlier about wanting to know more about the sponsors and kind of thing, and especially if some of the personality is because Ethan Phelps was playing Jones 3 Echo. That means he's the same batch, if you will, the same line as Lincoln 6 Echo. So you have to think that some of the personality, along with the memories, probably seeped in through the DNA into the way they are. He's a bit of a nut job, Jones 3 Echo, and this is one of the situations where I'm like, I would love to know the backstory of that sponsor, right? Because that right there would give you an indication because he acts so differently than any of the other clones. Why?
Right. So he very much played like an eccentric, like wealthy, or I could see it being a very eccentric, wealthy character.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe like a shut-in, someone who didn't have many friends or family.
Yeah.
And just...
But the fact that he's got this like sheet of paper with his, made up mathematical equation of how he's proving that he's going to win the lottery, you expect the sponsor to probably have like a bunch of like, Seven style notebooks, stashed away on bookshelves.
Or almost kind of like an inventor or like a Doc Brown.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, like a Christopher Lloyd. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there are some cases where, yes, the lives of the sponsors in comparison to how the clones develop is very interesting. I will say, like, say what you will about the story, about this movie, not necessarily cribbing, but bearing similarities to a lot of different properties before it. I think that there's a series in this movie that it doesn't need to be an overarching storyline through you could have an anthology series based on the island, and each episode tells the story of one of the clones and their sponsors. Like that would be fascinating. Mm-hmm. Very, very fascinating. Like there's room for this movie to come back and have life as a series, I think. But
without the Michael Bay blow him up.
Yeah.
Explosions.
Michael Bay wants to produce it, go right ahead.
Totally unnecessary though.
Yeah. But no, the Michael Bay money could produce it.
Well,
but I mean, get different directors, right? Get them in there, make an anthology series focusing on different clones. It would kind of feel, I think, a little bit like Westworld in a sense. So that Westworld vibe with the island world building thrown together into an anthology series on Netflix. If this now happens, I want some of that Michael Bay money. You're welcome. 7 figures, y'all. Steve Buscemi as James McCord. I know you love Buscemi, so I'm just going to throw this one right to you.
Oh, he was so perfectly perfect. He was so Buscemi and so on point. I mean, that scene where he was like, you could tell that dilemma of like, if he helps them out, they're both going to die, and he's totally aware of it, but he's a good guy at heart, and he still helps them. I love Buscemi.
He's a reluctant good guy, though.
Yeah, but you know what? He's just so incredibly good at what he does.
Yeah. I will say, and like obviously we're going back to Armageddon because of course he was in that, directed by Michael Bay. His character in that was very loud and very obnoxious in a good Buscemi type way. He wasn't loud or obnoxious here, and I think you can see that I don't know if he likes Lincoln Six Echo, but I think he's amused by it. He's intrigued by him because he's so different from the other clones. Mm-hmm. Like there's a fascination, I think.
It's always Buscemi going for the underdog characters. And you know what? I was just so sad that he met his demise the way he did. And like, that was hard to watch.
It's interesting, too, because it's not like it was a big death scene. It's not like this was like an epic death scene. He
To me, it was.
He wasn't killed. He was dispatched. That's how it felt. Does
he have a clone?
No, he just works there.
Fail.
You saw the place he lived in. He can't afford a clone. No. He's got to order all those mail order costumes for his girlfriend there.
Dead or worse, fired.
Sean Bean as Dr. Merrick, the CEO of the facility. Of course, most people will know Sean Bean as Ned Stark from Game of Thrones, but how was he for you?
I thought he was okay. Again, nothing really spectacular stood out.
I will say, like, at first, I liked the calm demeanor of Dr. Merrick, right? It reminded me a lot, and I'm going to draw a Moon Knight comparison here, of Ethan Hawke's character, not the regular character, but when they go into that little dream state psych ward where Moon Knight is like, in between life and death kind of thing. He's in the big white room and Ethan Hawke is playing the doctor that's trying to get him to realize that, it's very subtle, but it's just one of those, you don't know whether it's a mind game or it's a role he's playing, knowing that he's dealing with clones that are of a childlike mentality. Like, it's fascinating. But then the character does devolve into, megalomaniacal CEO that's not going to let anyone tear down his empire. I think the first half of the movie, Sean Bean is great. I think the second half of the movie, the character could have been written better. But that again, that's just me. Michael Clark Duncan as Starkweather 2 Delta. It's a smaller role, but I mean, you ask me, if Michael Clark Duncan is on the screen, I'm smiling.
He's so good.
Right?
He really is. Like, I wanted to see him survive. But yeah, you're right. It was probably one of the hardest to watch death scenes.
Yeah. Knowing Michael Bay films now, they've kind of become a parody of themselves. There's a Michael Bay look.
Lots of explosions.
There's that low tracking shot camera as someone stands up and looks off into the distance as the sun is behind them, kind of thing. It's a signature.
Car chase.
Well, the fact that there were scenes from that car chase with like the where they're pushing like the train wheels off the truck. Some of those car chase scenes were actually put into Transformers Dark of the Moon, apparently. So it's, cut and paste.
Right.
But it's...
Hey, he's already paid for them.
Right? Hey, you got to save money somewhere, right?
He owns them.
But I ask, though, because there's such a stigma on Michael Bay films now, going back and watching this, does it feel too Michael Bay or is it okay?
It's a good question. I mean, as far as Michael Bay films go, there was only really that small. It was almost like a middle section. Almost, I want to call that the intermission. That's the Michael Bay intermission between the two parts to this movie.
Yeah.
The utopian society versus the real world. And the Michael Bay intermission where things go boom.
Yeah.
I don't really know if I answered your question, but yeah, I mean, it kind of felt like he didn't Michael Bay all over the place. Like, it wasn't constant, which is nice.
Yeah.
There was definitely a story or two.
I mean, I guess the thing for me is, you were shocked that I said that this is probably my favorite Michael Bay film of all time. I think the thing of it is that it's, despite the comparisons to other movies and other properties, it felt original. Right? Transformers, I'm very invested in Transformers lore. So when these big giant CGI robots don't look like what I grew up with, like, I'm sure somewhere down the road we're going to talk about a whole lot of Transformers films because I got bones to pick with some of those. But the Bad Boys films, for what they are, they're okay, but they're Michael Bayified buddy cop films.
Yeah, but I think for that one, the big explosions were actually warranted. So I don't really hate on that.
Warranted, but it's formulaic, right?
I would say the Bad Boys films are probably my favorite.
I mean, there were some good films in his filmography. Like, there's no denying that. Like, The Rock, Armageddon, like these are good films. You know, you can literally have two movies that are very similar come out in the same year. One of them directed by Michael Bay, to see the difference. I can say that because it happened. Armageddon came out. It was like 3 months before Deep Impact. And it's stark, the difference in storytelling. One more point I need to bring up. And this is a personal thing. Because, I mean, we've talked about this before. I'm a musician, so the music plays a big thing for me here. The score by Steve Jablonsky for this film. It is an absolutely fabulous score. Like, I don't know about you. I don't know if it hit you like it did me. This score is, I am surprised that Steve Jablonsky did not win any awards for this score. It is that good.
I just want to know what song they were playing in the bar.
I still need to look that up. But if any of our listeners do know what it is, please hit us up on Twitter at NotThatBadcast. Because I fully admit that I did not look it up. I apologize. But now that I've gone on my little, praise of Steve Jablonsky, like, it's clear. There's a good reason why Michael Bay brought Steve Jablonsky on to compose the soundtrack for Transformers. The Island was freaking phenomenal as far as the score goes. But we cannot hide anymore. So, Carrie, who is your MVP? Who wins the lottery of The Island?
You know what? I have debated and feared this question all day. Because I actually have I have a 3-way tie.
Oh, no,
I have a tie.
It's not like this film has a big cast.
All right, let me run through the list, though. Because I love Buscemi.
I know you love
anything
Buscemi.
he's in, he's always my favorite character because he's Steve Buscemi.
Okay, but he was in like a third of the film.
So that aside, because I've already mentioned how fantastic he was. And I've already mentioned that Ewan McGregor, speaking in his hometown tongue of his Scottish accent, was phenomenal.
You like a Scouse?
I really liked that character. But I am going to go with Neelix.
Ethan Phillips.
Going to go with Ethan Phillips.
As Jones 3 Echo.
He was so wacky. I just liked him so much.
He was fun.
He was so much fun. You know what it is? It's all because of that one line where the clones are asked to sit quietly. And he is just on the edge of his seat, and he's like, "Oh yes, okay, thank you, sir."
Something's happening, and then he's thrown into the oven.
Right.
Yeah. I debated, and it was a toss up between two. And as much as I thought Scarlett Johansson was absolutely phenomenal in this, I'm going to go Ewan McGregor on this one here. I think, if we got to meet Sarah Jordan, the sponsor for Jordan 2 Echo, and we got to see Scarlett Johansson play multiple characters, that would have tipped everything over for me, over to her. But because Ewan McGregor had to play both Lincoln 6 Echo and Tom Lincoln, and I will say, like, in Michael Bay's defense, normally sometimes when you have someone playing, a clone or a twin of themselves kind of thing, it can look a little Ches. They nailed it. They absolutely nailed the scenes where both Lincolns were on screen at the same time.
I love the car scene.
Right?
Like, I mean, mad respect, because it's like, it was... like where they're like hitting each other or, holding the gun right to his head. It's like, wow. It was really well done.
It was really well done. And even like little lines here and there. Like, there's a line when he comes back after Tom Lincoln is shot, and he comes back to find Jordan 2 Delta at the house kind of thing. And then they start making out kind of thing. He says a line, says, "Oh, that tongue thing's amazing." I was reading on IMDb that apparently the first time he ever actually kissed a girl, he actually said it. Yeah. To which he's like, how much of a geek did I sound like, at that age?
Really?
Yeah. To the point of, if you find on Spotify the Steve Jablonsky score of this film, and please, by all means, if you do like listening to like classical type music, go find the score. It's great to listen to. There is a track on the score called "That Tongue Thing's Amazing."
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I will have to check that.
Oh my God. I can't believe I just went there, but I went there. Okay, so that is this episode of The Island. I can't believe we went down a Michael Bay movie road and actually found a ton of actually really good things to say. Before we go, though, I have to ask you, is there room for an Island 2 sequel to this?
No, but I loved your idea of making it a series.
Okay. Michael Bay, dear Michael Bay, please make this happen and send money. Because if you don't and you make the series, I'm coming after you.
I'd be happy with $7.
Don't give him an out. No, don't give him an out. You pay her $7, you pay me seven figures. I'll settle for 6 figures. No decimal points. Anyways, this is It's Not That Bad. Carrie, thank you so much for going down this road. And to you, our listeners, you guys know the drill. If you think there's a movie out there that is unfairly maligned, much like this one, or is just so bad that we can't find anything good to say about it, hit us up on Twitter at Not That Badcast, or go over to Facebook and follow and like us at facebook.com/Not That Badcast. Let us know and we will watch it. We will dissect it and we will find the good things to say, because we are looking for those A grades in B movies. Until next time, this is It's Not That Bad. She's Carrie. I'm Jay. You're awesome. Take care.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.